Hey guys, in this video I'm going to cover this book, The Weird World of Eerie Publications, and give sort of an overview of Eerie Publications. And this book is by a guy named Mike Howlett, came out in 2010, and you can still get it. I mean, it's readily available. The original cover price was like $32.95 or whatever. You can get them now for $27 and change from Amazon. If you get them from eBay, you probably pay a little more, but you can go Amazon and get them cheap. And if you have an interest in the history of monster magazines or the Eerie Publications in particular, this book is a must-have. And I made myself a little book cradle here, and hopefully this works out okay. We're going to thumb through, and I'll give you a little taste of what's in this thing. And there is an introduction by Stephen R. Bissett, famous for Swamp Thing, and he did a trade paperback called Taboo, I think. Used to have those. Those slipped through my fingers. Anyway, Stephen Bissett just kind of goes through his history with Eerie Pubs, and it's interesting, And it goes a few pages. And it has some cool Pubs illustrations here. And then that's neat right there, that mask. You can cut along the dotted lines and attach elastic. A weird horror mask. Chick Stone drew that. Worked for Marvel. Also, he did some really gory stuff for Eerie Pubs. Satan's Dead Demons, and this is the end of Steve Bissett's intro. And I actually have that issue of Weird. I have quite a few issues of Weird. I'm going to be showing some of them in the next video. I just wanted to familiarize everyone with Eerie Publications. Or, the ones that were already familiar, just a reminder here and there to get your feet wet again in blood and gore, as it were. This is a foreword by Mike Howlett. It's kind of his history with them. And this chapter, Prehistory in a Nutshell, it covers, the pre-code horror comics and the Senate witch hunts spurred on by Frederick Wortham and his book, Seduction of the Innocent. That guy had a vivid imagination. And well, I won't go into any details about him. You guys can make up your own mind. Anyway, here are some cool covers for pre-code horror comics. And then 1957, The Rise of the Monster Mag, Famous Monsters of Filmland. There's a photo of the cover for #1. I did a video on the first 30 issues of Famous Monsters of Filmland. Just go to my channel page and check that out if you're interested. Creepy, of course. This started, well, the cover is dated January 65, so that means it probably came out like 3 months before, at the very end of 64. And, it was basically EC Comics, pretty much. That Jim Warren, he got a lot of really great people together. Jack Davis, Wally Wood, Frank Frazetta, Reed Crandall, Al Williamson. And, they revived the horror comic in magazine format. So you can check out my video on Creepy. I did a video of the first 30 issues of Creepy as well. And I'm going to be covering the later issues. It's just that I've got so much to get through, I'm just trying to kind of mix it up and have some variety as we go. And then we get into Myron Fass. Now, he's the guy behind Eerie Publications, and I'll show you a picture of him in just a few minutes. Yeah, here's a nice some coverage of the Iger studio, or the Iger shop. This guy, his name was Jerry Iger. That's what he went by, Jerry. I mean, he built a stable of some of the best pre-code artists ever, and the Iger shop was in effect from 1936 to 1955. And, you know, they had Will Eisner, they had Matt Baker, uh, Maurice Whitman, Bob Powell, and Myron Fass and Ezra Jackson, you know, that were going to be in Eerie Pubs, or be responsible for Eerie Pubs later. And it was just a wonderful stable of artists. And they did a little bit here and a little bit there and a whole lot everywhere. And they all pitched in together, kind of like the Marvel bullpen did, you know, in the 60s and early 70s. They'd finish each other's work, but it all had a clean, high-quality look. So anyway, we go on here and see some more of the great pre-code that... Now this is a self-portrait of Myron Fass being attacked by some of his critters there, and you know, that's Fass. I mean, it looks just like him pretty much the way he looked back then. And I think that's him again right there. He was fond of drawing himself. At least it's a guy that looks a lot like him. May not actually be a self-portrait. And then it goes on to after you know, the horror comics died, and Fass moved on to different things and tried different publishing endeavors. This Lunatical humor mag, and of course the girly mags. You know, he was always big into the girly mags. You got Ogle, Girls with a Giggle. You know, they could only get so explicit back then. It's not like it is now, where you've got porn at the touch of a keystroke. It was pretty subdued back then. You could get put in jail for going too far back then. And here is a picture of Fass right here. Ogle's Cheetah Rivera in the first issue of Ogle, much to her dismay. And there's another mag there. You know, he tried different things, and he was like a mega publisher. He published all kind of sensationalistic fare for different genres. You know, the raunchier and most sensational, more sensational the better, because, you know, like he was right. It sold magazines to people. Everything was kind of suppressed back then, as far as the morals were really strict, you know, for publishing for the most part. And if people saw something a little bit outlandish, they'd buy it probably, especially guys. The Rapist Werewolf. This is from Shock Tales #1. I don't have that. I wish I did. And some other mags that were out in those days. And uh-oh. Huh. My little book cradle tried to rebel, so I had to whip it back in line. So anyway, this is the Suspense is another one, another monster magazine that he published back in the day, 1959. I have, let's see, I think it's Thriller I have an issue of. There's a picture of Fass right there. He oftentimes posed for these photos in these sleazy rags with women, you know, in peril. And now there's Fass again on this Thriller cover, Volume 1, Number 1, February 1962. I'll eventually get around to doing a video on those odd monster magazines I have from the late 50s and early 60s. There's some more issues of Thriller, Girly Mag, Dave Clark 5 versus the Beatles. Yeah, he jumped on the music bandwagon too, you know. He was all about teen mags and girly mags, and anything he could make a buck on, he'd publish the heck out of. Now, finally, we get to the pubs. Okay, this is the cover of the first issue of Weird. And I'll be starting my video covering Weird with that issue. This goes into discussion about the fight between James Warren and Myron Fass to secure the name Eerie for their next publishing endeavor. James Warren won because overnight he threw together an ash can of Eerie #1, printed up 200 copies, dropped some off at the newsstand on the way to the meeting he was having with the distributor and Myron Fass. And he said, you know, according to the distributor, the first one that can publish the magazine and get it on the stands gets the name. And that was Warren. He said, I've already published it. It's on, you can go down and check the newsstand just outside the hotel, you know. So he won that, and Fass was really pissed off because he rushed this Weird #1 cover is not even finished. You can still see the unerased pencil lines on it. And they rushed that thing out, and of course, you know, it went through normal channels, so it took a little while for it to hit the stands. And he was so mad at Jim Warren, he named his publishing company Eerie Publications, because he could not secure the name Eerie for his magazine, his first magazine. And that's where the Eerie Pubs came from. Here's a picture of the ash can, Eerie #1. And this is Carl Burgos. And he did the art for this Frankenstein story in Weird #1. And also he did that cover that wasn't finished. They rushed off. This is Morris as seen in Panic Volume 2, number 11, February 1966. And he hosted some little short things like Weird Facts in various Eerie publications. It was mostly in Weird. He was the closest thing they had to a horror host, really, although he didn't host stories. He just hosted that little Weird Facts. And there is number 3. We're number 3. And they had, you know, access to scads of pre-code horror comic book artwork to put in these things. So the costs were very low. And he could crank them out for nearly nothing, you know. I mean, he just had to pay for a cover, and in most cases, they didn't pay much. There's a cool cover for Weird. Another one. Okay, he branched out in '68. Started out with this Tales from the Crypt here. And of course, you know, he got a letter from Bill Gaines' lawyer and said, don't do that. So he had to change it the next issue to Tales of Voodoo. I have both of those. I'm going to feature those. Now, when I feature these magazines in my videos, I'm going to go into detail and tell you what stories are in them and where they come from and all, you know, the fun stuff for the people that are into minutia like that. And there's a classic classic Eerie Pubs cover, the giant munching on the vampire chicks from Terror Tales. Wish I had that one. I don't. I probably have about a third of the Eerie Pubs. They did like 287 of them, I think. And they've gotten expensive, so I just, you know, I'm never going to have the whole run. I won't. They're just too expensive now. Low grade ones are $10 to $15 or more. Mid grade ones are probably $20 to $40 or more, and you know, you get up into the higher mid grades, around 40 or 50, $60, and true high grade ones can be $50 to $100 or more. That's just the regular issues. Web of Horror. That's my favorite monster mag right there. I want to do a whole video on the 3 issues of Web of Horror at some point. and the fourth that was never published, because I have every story from Web of Horror #4 that could have possibly been in Web of Horror #4 from fanzines, that I have all those fanzines, so I'm going to show all that. And basically, I'm going to try to step it up a little bit here. There's Psycho #1. Did a video on Psycho. Check it out. Weird Worlds. That's when Eerie Pubs were trying to get into the science fiction. And there's one of the Sweat mags. Men's adventure mags, you know. This is Fernando Fernandez. He's a great artist. He he did some work for Skywall. And let's see. Wow, 15 minutes already. Boy, time flies. Full Skywall cover, and then there's a Witch's Tales cover. There's Marvel's Tales of the Zombie. I did a video on that title as well, so you know, check my channel page if you're into monster mags. Check out all these videos, man. I described in detail the contents of them and who did the covers and everything like that. I'm not just going to show you a cover. I'm going to tell you, you know, what's in it and make it mean something. Although it's good just to look at the covers, but yeah, I'm going to bug you with the details. There's Atlas Seaboard's Weird Tales of the Macabre #2. I'll do videos on those Atlas Seaboards at some point. Who knows when. And there's a weirdo magazine that Fass did. Here he's talking about the Australian Greydowns. I only got one of those. Those things have gotten really expensive over the years. Publisher named Greydown in Australia. And okay, this is significant. This is Myron Fass right here with his 44 mag hog leg artillery piece. He carried that around the office at Eerie Pubs in New York, and he used it to intimidate people that worked for him. And he would shoot that thing in the office once in a while. He shot through the wall into Stanley Harris' office and almost hit Stanley Harris. Stanley Harris got the hell out of there. He left Myron Fass and started his own publishing company, Harris Publications. And he, in a lawsuit, he actually got control of what was left of the pubs, you know. And in '77, I think he started up a couple of titles and started some new ones, and it was never the same after that, really. But hey, you know, it's pubs. It's the same stuff that went into the original Eerie Pubs. Weird Vampire Tales. That's one of the newer titles there. Actually, the last issue of Weird Vampire Tales in 1982 was the last Eerie Publications issue published. That signaled the death knell for Eerie Pubs. And here's the one-shots. I've got most of these. I'll feature them in you know, video. And I got a couple of these crime mags. I've got that one, Tales of the Killers, and one of these murder tales. I think it's that one. I was buying monster mags like crazy like 20 years ago. About 15 years ago, there's Fass again. Yeah, they're telling what happened to him. He retired and went to Florida, started a gun store, and had a little publishing business in the back where he still cranked out gun mags and different things. Gasm, that's one of the knockoffs. 77. That they were knocking off heavy metal there. Star Warp, 78. Of course, after Star Wars, everything was Star this and Space that. And Gun Pro, there's one of Fass stalwart publications about guns. Here is the Stanley Harris last issue of Creepy that came out in '88. The true last issue of Creepy was number 145 that came out in, I think it was '83. But this one, you know, was a few years later, and it's got a Corbin cover. I mean, it's fun. I think it's reprints, but and then Stanley Harris started the comic book size Vampirella books. Harris did the same thing with Vampirella. That's number 113. That's an expensive issue because of the print run. Came out in '88. The real Vampirella, Warren Vampirella, ended at 112, I think, in '82 or '83. I'd have to check. After a while, all these numbers just run together in your head. You just got to keep reminding yourself. There's one of his girly magazines there. And here's some foreign stuff. Jacula. You know, foreign stuff that reprinted a lot of Eerie Pubs junk. And there's the label for the horror record. I ordered that in the '70s from Johnson Smith Company. And it arrived broken. Thank you, Mr. Mailman. I threw it away. I was so pissed off. Now I wish I'd have kept it just for the label. You can hear this on YouTube. And there's a really cool video. Just search YouTube for Johnson Smith Company horror record. And it has like a collage of limited animation made from different Eerie Pubs artwork, and it's that record playing, you know, in the video. So it's really cool. And let's see. There's Great West. Some more of, boy, that's beautiful there. That's by Burgos. And they're going into the individuals that work for Eerie Pub here and Eerie Pubs. I'm not going to go into all that. This video is already over 20 minutes. I just wanted to do an overview. I'll get into the detail when I start showing the actual magazines. Here's some cool covers. Classic. Heads in the cloches. And this is a cover gallery. It shows some of the gory Eerie Pubs covers, you know. Hybrid horror. Okay, this is a new story. When at the time of publication of this book in 2010, this is by Dick Ayers and his son. And of course, you know, he was he did a lot of work. He was a very prolific comic book artist from back in the day. At this time, though, he was elderly, and his son helped him finish this up. And it's a pale shadow of the work he did as a pro, but it's still fun, you know. And here are the appendices and the Perry Rodan covers that were reprinted for a lot of the Eerie Pubs. And some of the other related stuff. And then you've got different appendices. And here, this is the posters. Never saw these, but boy, I would like to. These are posters that surfaced in the early 2000s. And I've never seen any of them for sale, or I don't know how many of them were printed or anything. But if you want to know the scoop on them, buy this book. I mean, anybody that's into Eerie Pubs needs this book. Trust me, you need it. Even if you're just into monster magazines in general, you need this. Now, this is the other book that I was going to show, The Weird Indexes of Eerie Publications. This gives detailed information about every Eerie Pub ever published. And here is the format for it. And it tells the names of the stories, how long the stories were, who did the art, what the background was, you know, because a lot of the Eerie Pub stuff was redrawn from reprints. Some of it was cobbled together from different sources, including their own. And then you have this detailed information here on each issue. This is starting with Horror Tales. And when I start my videos on them next, I'm going to start with Weird because it was the first one. And I have a sampling of all of these titles. So I'll be doing several videos on Eerie Publications for the next probably few months because I'm going to mix it up with some other stuff. And there's the first one, Weird number 1. And the last one, Weird Vampire Tales, Volume 5, Number 3. So, there we go. That's my overview and coverage of this book, The Weird World of Eerie Publications. If you don't have it, grab it. See you next time.